I'm not sure I believe in unicorns, but I do believe this new Pace RC429 is a beautiful, retro modern, super versatile, 3-in-1 quiver killer. My name's Guy Kesteven. I've been a professional biking kit reviewer for over 27 years, and this is the first part of my live ride review of the new Pace RC429. The bike the famous Yorkshire brand are calling their do-it-all unicorn. So the 429 is part of a brace of new bikes from Pace, the longest running, still active, very active in the case of Adrian Carter, the rider designer, mountain bike brand in the UK. They've been doing innovative stuff since 1989 in the mountain bike sphere. So there's the 529, the more rad, hardcore trail hardtail, and then there's this 429, which is they describe as their unicorn all-rounder, in that it can be built up with a 140 fork, 130 fork, 120 fork. I'm running a 140 at the moment. Afternoon. But also, it can run a rigid fork and drop bar, which is the format I'll be reviewing it in for the second half of the video. So, gonna hit up the single track now. Oh. Adrian rigs his actually shifters the other way around to me, and then afternoon. Thank you very much. Cheers. So, gonna hit up some of the local single track this afternoon to explore the trail side of this bike, and then give it back to Adrian for a rebuild into its more gravel incarnation. But both bikes 853 premium Reynolds air hardening steel tubing, and this 429 is a completely different tube set. It's actually a much slimmer set of tubes than the 529 to give it a more sprung and lively feel. And straight away this feels more kind of old school, what you'd expect from a steel bike. With longer forks you obviously need a bit more stiffness. Adrian uses round oversized pipes on the 529, whereas this 429 slimmer tubes, more fluid feel, and also it's got a conventional UDH drop gear hanger on the back too, so it hasn't got that slide out single speed capability of the 529, but it'll take conventional or T-type SRAM transmissions. And I have to say, straight away, properly loving the flow of this frame. And it's certainly not, you know, uptight XC angles on this bike. You've got 66.5 with a rigid fork in as the head angle, but with this 140 in, looking at 65.5. Actually looking at 64.5 degree head angle. So seriously slack and capable, with a reach anywhere between 470 and 477 on this large, depending what fork you run, and seat angles from 74.5 through to 76.5, and an average BB drop of 70 mil. So it's properly low slung as well. And they're doing some work through here. So while it's not as hench and muscular in feel as that 529, it's still got very progressive planted angles. If you run it in trail mode, but then it's more agile and responsive if you fetch the rigid fork on it. And also you've got that classic, really nice ductile steel spring to the back end. It's actually relatively long, 440mm, so that gives it again a bit more stability, but also, oh, they've sanitised this, which is a big shame. Also means a longer spring in the back end, which again helps that fluidity and forgiveness. Oh, hey, oh, the boardwalk's gone then. We're getting fully gravelled by the looks of things. So that's a bit about the ride. Let's just pop over the river, park up, and have a look at the details. I have to say though, the spring of this bike is glorious. Don't always get that with steel these days. So, as I said, 853 premium steel, Birmingham built, and this bike, Birmingham made, and this bike is actually put together by Ford in Czechoslovakia, which is a company that Adrian and Pace have had a relationship with since the 80s, when they used to supply forks to their race team. Since the 90s, when they used to supply forks to their race team. But as you can see, slim, custom butted tubes all the way through. You've got gussets under the head tube and under the top tube there. You've got a dynamo port there, which runs all the way to the back of the top tube. Sloping, so you've got plenty of standover height. You've got 3 bottle cage bosses on the down tube, 2 on the seat tube, and then 3 underneath the belly of the bike. All the cabling is external, apart from the seat tube dropper there. And you've got fuel tank mounts on the top tube as well. And then moving to the back, you've got another dynamo port there. You've got rack mounts, mudguard mounts, more rack and fender mounts, and obviously cable port if you're not running wireless like this bike is. And bye-bye to my glasses. There's that UDH hanger that makes it fully modern drivetrain compatible. And as I was saying on the ride in, it can be built up in a whole load of different ways. That's the whole point of this bike, is that the frame is the centerpiece of whatever you want your adventure bike to be, and you can change it Thunderbird style from mission to mission. But this is the most trail spec, so you've got that 140mm pike fork there. Hello doggy, hello mate. You've got, you know, proper Burgtec ride wide bars. You've got Burgtec E4. I think we need to run through this stick. Are we going in? Come on then. You missed it. It was good to have some interaction. You've got little Hope stem on there, Burgtec saddle. It's dog central here. Bike yoke dropper. Again, plenty of space for a long stroke dropper in there. And then you can run whatever mountain bike wheels you want in there. As I say, I've gone super light with a set of zip high tops. But I know Adrian tends to really like a heavy set of wheels on his bikes. I actually took the wheels Adrian wanted to supply out without. He runs a Hope 4-30 in here for sort of durability and to get that really planted feel, because that's what he likes from his motorbike past. But I prefer a much livelier, more buoyant wheel set in a steel frame like this, especially when it's, you know, the faster of the two bikes. And I think it works, but obviously if you agree with Adrian, spec what wheels you want. They can supply frame, they can supply rolling chassis, or they can do a custom build however you want outside their standard spec kits. Anyway, back to this one. As you can see, you've got full GX SRAM, latest one with the alloy cranks, and that really neatly hidden battery in the back there, and then that T-type cassette. So, thoroughly modern in terms of a trail build, but with that real classic sort of slim steel, slender lines. I mean, it's a very positive day already because it's the first time the sun has shone in a long time, but it doesn't half look gorgeous down by the river. But this isn't a bike for standing and chatting about. It's a bike for riding. So let's crack on again. Oh, and if you're wondering why it's got that remote lever on rather than underbar when there's nothing else there, that's because that lever will be easier to transfer to the dropper that works with the drop bars in part 2. Do you know what this feels like, this bike? It feels like a cross between that first Flare Max build I did on the skinny Flare Max chassis and my Specialized chisel, and that is a very good blend indeed in terms of geometry and frame feel. Oh, I have to say, it is refreshing to ride a steel bike that hasn't had all the flow and flourish strengthened out of it. It's got that proper load up and release under power. That makes it feel kind of organic and sinewy in the way it approaches climbs, but gives it impressive grip. And like I say, it's not heavy either, and you can certainly pull a significant amount of weight out of this build with a carbon crank, X2 brakes rather than E4s, carbon bar, and still have a bike that felt the same. So it really is very versatile in the way you could build it up. I got some hate on the Singletrack forum for my last pace video for fanboying on pace and Adrian's history and everything. So I'm not going to go into that again, but well, I'm finding it really hard not to be a real fanboy for this 429. Oh, it's just, yes, you lively, live little beauty. And I know it doesn't affect the performance, but it does affect how much you gel with the bike. And I absolutely love the colour, but it's that agility. Just the spring heel of it. Oh, it's only meant to be a steady chill out ride for Ilkley Moor tonight, but I can't help just putting some watts down and enjoying the way this bike responds. I should point out, still stiff enough up front with those gussets to not feel too noodly at the tips of those forks. And I'm a lot keener, I have to say, seeing how fluid it is now, to try it with those carbon rigid forks in. So I was worried that'd be a bit punishing, but this frame flows so nicely. Don't think it will be. Anyway, that's part 2. Let's concentrate on part 1 for now. And of course, you could build it up in between the 140 and the rigid with the 120mm fork. That'd save you about 400-500 grams depending what fork you went for. Steepen the angles a little bit, and then you've got what I suppose you'd call a downcountry build. Hashtag fashion. I don't know, is downcountry still fashionable? I like it. I think, to be honest, that's the way I'd be tempted to go with a build on the bike myself. But the real win with this bike in this trail mode is it doesn't feel like a compromise. It feels like a proper trail machine, which I'm really glad about. So I think I am partially responsible for this project. 'Cause I do remember a chat I had with Sophie, I think it was, Sophie Carter, Adrian's daughter. Or it might have been Adrian himself, but basically along the lines of, should we build a separate 700c gravel bike or like a lightweight cross-country hardtail? And I said, well, to be honest, build them all in one bike, because it should be possible if you get the geometry and the fixtures right. And that's exactly what they've done. And it feels glorious as a result. Just taking a high line to... It's busy tonight because it's a pleasant evening. But yeah, it doesn't feel like... I'm always worried when you get a whole load of bosses and holes drilled in a frame that it's gonna just deaden the ride, you know, put too many literally nails in its coffin in terms of ride feel. Because, you know, you do have to look after steel tubes. You can't just expect them to ride beautifully just because they're 853. You've got to choose the right pipes in the right dimensions at the right angles to make it all work. But like I say, Adrian's been doing this a long old time in alloy, steel and carbon, and this bike just, it centralises the rider really nicely. I mean, that's the joy of modern progressive geometry, is it just puts you where you need to be for control, but it's not so stretched, you're just pinned there. Yeah, so you're just a passenger rather than a pilot. This feels really light, lively and engaging to ride. Oh yes. And while you might think steel automatically means a heavier bike, yeah, the frame's fairly heavy, but with a set of Zip XC wheels in, lightweight Schwalbe tyres, even with this GX T-type kit on, so, you know, alloy crank, alloy Burgtec bar, whole bike comes in at 12.45 kilos without pedals. And more to the point, feels really, really sprightly. Actually feels more lively and keen to get up and go than a carbon bike I'm testing at the moment that weighs 450 grams less, but feels really dull under power. And of course, having a genuine 3-in-1 situation like this, where with a switch of wheels and fork, and maybe bars if you want to be extreme with it, you have got 3 very different bikes. Obviously it makes it a much better value proposition as well, so, you know, that frame doesn't seem as premium in price. And like I say, while you can feel it loading up and twisting a bit under power, that does give you real compliance and key into surfaces in terms of traction. So little short techie pops like that, not a problem. And it just feels like a bike that wants to ride all day. I mean, definitely dry trails helps after the spring we've had, but this has got all the joys of spring in a tubing sense, as well as a meteorological one. You? Hey! Nice little rear wheel skip there. Not too punishing through the feet, you know. Skipping a bit offline, but I don't mind that because the geometry's pretty steadfast up front. So even if the back end is doing a bit of a hop and a skip, that front wheel still nicely engaged and confident. So there we go. Well, that's part one of the Pace RC429 live ride review. The trail bit. Like I say, we're going to give this back to Pace now. They're going to do a bit of a magic wand trick on it, get a drop bar on there, get a rigid fork on there, and we're going to see whether this really does work as a bike packing bike, because I can definitely say it works as a trail bike in a really beautiful, flowing and lively way, in case you hadn't gathered that from the ride review so far. And I think it'll work really well as a down country kind of hardtail as well. But ridges is a different kettle of fish altogether. And I have ridden bikes like this that haven't really worked in that format. So this is to be continued. But for now, massive thanks to Adrian and Sophie at Pace for lending me this test bike. Huge thanks to my regular channel sponsors who will be listed at the end, but now joined by Feedback Sports, Lazine and Time Pedals. So if you're in the industry and you like what I'm doing and you want to join the gang, support me, keep me chattering on to a GoPro about bikes, then please get in touch. Also, massive thanks to my Patreon subscribers who do that on a regular basis anyway, and they get early, extended and behind the scenes edits as a thank you. So if you really like what I'm doing here, then please consider subscribing on Patreon. It really doesn't cost much at all, but it makes a massive difference to the sustainability and the growth of this channel, because we are going up in 2024, and the more people like you who like, subscribe and click for notifications, the more it will grow. But most of all, if you've enjoyed this edit, then please tell your mates about the channel, and hopefully they'll join in and enjoy it too. But for now, I've been Guy Kesteven on Guy Kes TV, talking about Pace's 3-in-1 unicorn, the RC429.